Hey everyone, and welcome to another E38 video. Today we're going to be looking at some common faults with the E38, specifically the 2001 BMW 740i, which hopefully can give you an idea of what to look out for if you're in the market to buy one of these E38s. Anyways, let's get into it. So if you're looking at an E38 in North America, there's a good chance that it came with BMW's 4.4 liter V8. And the first thing I would recommend looking at these with the 4.4 liter V8s is whether or not the cooling components have been replaced. And what this includes is the thermostat, the water pump, expansion tank, the fan, the radiator, and various other hoses. Now, BMW, for whatever reason, decided to design some of these components basically from cheap plastic, and as a result these components, they usually have a life of about 100,000 kilometers. So with a car at this age, if it hasn't been looked at, it's definitely something you need to consider. Replacing these components, it's not that expensive compared to other jobs, but if it's not looked after, it can definitely cause some serious damage to the engine from overheating. So the next, and arguably the most important thing to look out for, is the timing chain guides with these BMW 4.4 liter V8s. Now unfortunately, BMW also decided to have the timing chain guides made out of cheap plastic, and as a result they become brittle and they break over time. And to check for this, what you want to make sure is that the car doesn't sound like a diesel. And also, if you can, remove the oil pan, and if there's bits of plastic in there, then that means that unfortunately the timing chain guides have failed. Now these timing chain guides can last roughly between anywhere from 200 to 250,000 kilometers, maybe even a bit longer, depending on how many heat cycles it's had. But if the car does have higher mileage like that and the timing chain guides have not looked at along with the timing chain, then there's a good chance that you need to consider that into your budget. And also check the service history to see whether or not the timing chain tensioner has been regularly done. These V8s also have a tendency to leak oil, and that's mainly due to various gaskets. The main one to look out for are the valve cover gaskets right here. And one indication of that is, first of all, you can visibly see whether or not it's leaking, and also if the car is misfiring on one of the cylinder banks, then there's a good chance that the valve cover gasket for that cylinder bank has to be replaced. As far as reliability goes across all engine models, you're probably going to have the most headaches with the 4.4 liter V8 in the 740i. The 5.4 liter V12 found in the 750i and Li might be a bit more durable since it's just two inline-six engines put together, but there's a lot more components that can potentially fail and need to be replaced. If you live in other parts of the world, your best bet is going with the 728i, which had BMW's simple M52 straight 6. However, you're going to have to give up performance, as the E38 size might be a bit too much for the mere 196 horsepower that the 728i makes. In my opinion, your best bet is going with the 740D Sport version, as it offers the best combination of power, reliability, and fuel economy coming from a 4 liter V8 turbo diesel. Moving on to the suspension, you want to make sure that things like control arms, bushings, ball joints, links, boots, etc. are all in fairly decent shape. This car should handle well, and if it doesn't, or it just isn't driving straight, then that's a good indication that these things might have to be looked at. And also, if you have the opportunity, it's good to bring the car on a hoist and see under the car what it looks like. Now it's also worth noting that these components, they do tend to wear out a bit more frequently in the front rather than the rear because of the car's weight on the front. So check the service history to make sure that those things have been looked at. So another thing to look out for is the transmission. Now all E38s that had a automatic transmission were offered with the exact same 5-speed automatic, with later models having the Steptronic function. Now what you want to look out for is basically that the transmission is entering gears properly, it's shifting smoothly, and also if Steptronic works. Now transmissions, they can be expensive to fix, but it's worth noting that these 5-speed ZFs are definitely a lot more durable than the later 6-speed ZFs that were offered in BMWs. And also BMW claimed at the time that the transmission and the differential were both sealed for life, but that is definitely not the case. At this age, the car should definitely have had the oil change in the transmission along with the fluids in the differential. And if the car isn't, performing properly with the transmission, or if the rear end feels a little bit funky, then there's a good chance that those two things have to be looked at. Alright, so moving on to the interior, there's definitely a lot of buttons, so if you have time, press all of them and see whether or not the desired function works. But here are some common faults. And the main one is usually with BMWs of this whole entire era, and that's faded pixels. If you're looking at changing the instrument cluster, that can run you about $1,000 at the dealership. But there are also methods online that show you how to change it that aren't as expensive. Check to make sure that the windows can all roll down. Failed window regulators are a common problem with BMWs of this era. And some other electronics to also consider are the sunroof, so make sure that it retracts and tilts, and also the tilt and telescopic steering wheel. Another issue is the HVAC controls. So the first thing you want to check is to see whether or not all the fan speeds work. And if they don't, there's a good chance that the blower motor resistor has failed, or the blower motor itself, which causes the fan to stop working. And you should also check and see whether or not hot and cold air can be blown from the vents, because usually heater cores and AC compressors tend to go out. And finally, you should also check all the rubber seals around the cabin to see whether or not they're in good condition, or if they're a bit stripped, because if they are, there's a good chance that the car has spent a decent amount of time outside and that water could be entering the cabin. Finally, moving on to the trunk, what you want to look out for is whether or not the soft close motor works. And to do so, simply put the trunk down in this position, lightly push on it, and you should hear the motor engage. Anyways, I hope you found this video informative on whether or not you're looking at purchasing an E38. Now bear in mind that there are countless issues that can go wrong with this car, just like any other car, but I thought I would highlight some common issues that go wrong on pretty much every E38. Now as far as owning one goes, you have to bear in mind that these were once $100,000 cars with the latest and greatest features, so it's expected that ownership will be more expensive than an economy car. But the online BMW community is fantastic, and if you're ever having any issues, there's a good chance others have experienced the same and have listed a documented solution on forums and YouTube. Also, if you are not super comfortable on wrenching a car or knowing how cars work, I would highly advise on bringing your car for an inspection. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.